Welcome to the Doo-Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. I'm your host, Suzan Chin-Taylor, CEO and founder of Creative Raven, the firm that helps wastewater industry contractors and manufacturers unlock the power of digital marketing, AI, and PR to boost sales and opportunities. Whether it's through our online marketing and lead generation programs or providing a fully outsourced marketing department, we are passionate about helping businesses in the wastewater and civil infrastructure sectors not just survive, but thrive in today's digital world. Each episode, I'll be bringing you expert tips and strategies to help you grow and succeed. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Doo-Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. Today, we are in our final episode of a series that we have been talking about industrial wastewater and various facets of it with John Grizz, God, I love that nickname, Deal of Water. So welcome back, John.
Well, I appreciate it, Susan. This has been a really interesting set of conversations we've had.
Yes, it has been. And so today, to round out this series, we really need to touch on the subject of reuse, or we're going to run out.
Yeah.
And so when we think about the big threats to our industrial economy and industrial growth, it may not be labor. It may not be supply chain. It may not be raw materials, oils, things like that. But it very well could be, and we're kind of predicting right now, it's going to be water. And with all of the new data centers being built and manufacturing and experiencing droughts like we are here in the West, you're in Colorado, I'm in Northern Arizona, we worry about it. We saw a little window and a glimmer of hope where it looked like we were almost out of the drought, but it looks like we might be going back into drought situations again, that we are very rapidly entering a water constrained economy. And so it's kind of a scary thing to think about because most of us imagine, oh, there's this infinite supply of water, but there isn't. And so the water demand, explosion, the data centers, like I said, and communities are starting to push back because they don't want to see their own water costs. Residents do not want to see their own water bills going up. As much as we love all these AI tools, we have to recognize that in order to have all these tools, we need to have these data centers. And they're huge consumers of fresh water. So I want to talk about the shift to reuse. And you talk about that model of fit for use. And that's really an important thing to bring about when we're talking about reuse, that it's not water for drinking use, that everything has to be made for potable intake, but fit for some type of use. And this is where industry can play a major role. And even these data centers, if they're doing the right thing, can really play a major role in staving off this water crisis through the right type of reuse. And so you mentioned to me that there's going to be a need, if they're smart, the companies, and I'm looking at my notes here, that companies are going to need to recycle 80 to 90% of their water. And eventually this is going to be something where it's going to become a requirement and not a choice if they're going to survive. And so you mentioned the concepts, and this is where I really want to dive in, is of a self-contained reuse, again in that model of fit for use system. And what is that for people who may not have ever heard of that term? What is that, and what does that look like for an industrial water user?
Well, the easiest analogy is a spaceship. They don't make water on a spaceship. They have to reuse what they have. So there's great tech and they can afford it because there's only 3 people involved or 4 people involved. They can recycle the water in your urine. They can recycle cooling water. They can recycle all water. But by the way, they're doing this fit for purpose thing. They're not recycling all water for drinking, right? Drinking water is a very special, very small amount of the
Right.
total water that's necessary on the planet. Um, it's too bad that we didn't have gray water capability when we built the U.S. Probably the only country that could have done it from the ground up. We didn't think about it. But this idea of using recycling water to the point where it's good enough for its intended purpose, that's what fit for purpose is. And it might be that it's good enough to put on crops, good enough to wet on roads in the dirt roads in the summer because there's beat down dust. A closed water loop is really what we need to be looking toward, because the idea that an industry is taking drinking water, which is not even suitable for their industrial purposes because it's got minerals added back in and sometimes fluoride. So they're going to have to do something to it at the plant to make it, fit for their purpose. So creating a closed water loop, with the exception of evaporation and, destruction through steam and things like that, you really can and should be reusing most of the water that's being used at your plant. Whether, again, you're manufacturing cars, you're pulling water out of petroleum, that water could be treated for beneficial use and used to water the grass at the refinery. I mean, it just takes a little bit of creative thinking to think about this. People wouldn't use slag out of steel operations. That was somebody else's problem. That was trash. And they realized that that's money. And we need to start thinking about water that same way. I'm not going to go off on a tirade about bottled water because I can, but the cost of water is directly proportional to your personal efficiency in using it. Simple things like dramatically lowering your home water bill by replacing worn out plumbing components. I personally saw this recently. I'm going to go off on a little left side here.
That's okay.
So we got this cool water meter from Evergreen Water guys, and I can look hour by hour at our water usage. And one thing I quickly learned is that somebody takes too long showers. And so I cut down the amount of time that I spent in the shower because I could see the spike go off every morning at 7:30. That was me. But the other thing I found out is that we're wasting 1,000 gallons a month because one of the toilets had a little leak in the tank. And every 15 minutes, it would fill it back up and we'd burn 30 gallons of water.
Wow.
Oh my God, that's a non-trivial thing, 1,000 gallons. Right. And I'm like, the water doctor. So, and the software is free. They put in the thing as normal order course of business. It takes me 2 minutes a day to look at it to make sure that we're being responsible with our home water use. So that's a personal example that I can give you there. Our little factory of producing happy people in my home is based on our water use and our electricity use too. Getting to data centers, though, you've got a really good point there. But I personally reviewed the data center water reuse standards years ago. So I know that they built recycling in. So the water that they're using, hopefully, is just water lost through natural processes, because it's much cheaper, especially since it's being used as a coolant. Right. They could be using like antifreeze. It just would cost more.
Right.
There needs to be more of a closed system there too, because I know a lot of waterscapes as condensate, as steam, out of these extremely hot operations. If you've ever picked up your laptop after it's been on all day.
Oh, yes. Okay,
now magnify that by, 100,000. That's going to generate a significant amount of heat. Mm. And so being in a place that's got a low humidity solves a lot of those problems, because heat moves faster in drier air and you can get rid of it. But recycling water has got to be baked into the process. It's not just water, by the way, it's electricity cost is going to go up. I personally think this, first of all, it's not AI. AI is a sentient being. It's a bunch of chat bots based on large language models and some genetic algorithms. But it's already impregnated our life or infiltrated our lives, and we're at like 2%. So these data centers are going to be built and people are going to use them because there's an economic driver behind it. Again, that responsibility to make money first, not to take care of society first. Amazon is going to cut thousands of jobs and use robots to pick boxes now. Great. So we need the labor shift. We've got to do re-education. All that's got to happen. But I guarantee you that they're going to use more water than they're currently using, giving the humans a pint every hour or whatever they're allowed to drink. And so water is going to continually increase. The need for water is going to continually increase. We're going to have to segment out different types of water, and we're going to have to recycle based on what's in the water and stop using generic solutions.
Let's dive into that. When you say let's stop using generic, give me an example of when you talk fit for use instead of a generic solution, something that could solve a very specific problem. Just one.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can always pull my products out, but let me give you an example. So we bet on you know what a coking plant is? They make coke. China took our steel industry because we let them. And they have like 450 independent coking facilities in China. They take bituminous coal, they heat it up to make really high quality carbon that they can mix with iron to make steel. Okay, how do you think they cool off that coal when they're done burning it? They throw water on it.
Right.
And so they create this wonderful waste stream of anything that's in coal. Hydrocarbons everywhere, again, metals, heavy metals, all the stuff that I worry about. So we bid on this plant and we came in, $10 million cheaper than Veolia. But the Veolia had two things going for it. One, they needed about 30 guys to run the plant. And in China, if you want to get a contract, you got to show how many people you're going to employ. Our plant was going to be controlled remotely by a guy in a different building, not even a full-time person. But the real kicker for us was the fact that they had every box that you could imagine in a wastewater treatment plant. They adjust the pH up, and then they're going to drive it down, and then they're adding this, and they're taking it back out again, and all they were trying to do is get rid of hydrocarbons and metals. That's 2 reactors from us. And so when I talk about generic solutions, I'm really talking about these big construction companies. They measure the value of a contract based on how many cubic yards of concrete they're going to pour and how many people are going to have to be in the control room. We need to get really specific. If you only have, in your industrial process, very discrete kinds of contaminants, then let's just treat for those. Let's don't, as an industry, force people to buy stuff they don't need just because that's what we've always done. If I see another gas flotation device, unnecessarily being used in a plant that doesn't even have particles coming out of the water, I'm just going to scream. I'm like, why is this here? This is just somebody sold you something you did not need. And I'm sorry, but it's that box mentality, and they're not solving a problem.
One size fits all.
Right, because it's easier. We designed this system 30 years ago, and our technicians know how to work on it, and we have all the rates, and we do. And so, first this, and we get this, and we get this. Yeah, I guess you're solving the problem, but you're also driving people away from recycling water because those are really expensive CapEx and, operators. And if somebody has chemical additives, I run the other way. I mean, there's no reason for chemical additives with modern technology. None. Flocculation happens in a bunch of different ways. There is no reason to throw polymers at water to attract stuff. There's a bunch of different ways depending on what you're grabbing, to solve that problem.
Interesting. So, in closing, what I would really like to touch on is that, because we've talked about this in our other episodes, is that do you think there's going to come a time where wastewater treatment, we're doing it not so much from the municipal side, but on the industrial side, because it does eventually affect municipal, that it can be both profitable, to meet their edicts for the shareholders, and humanitarian at the same time? And what role do you see industry needing to play, that they must play in global water security and stewardship?
I think that's a sleeves off your vest kind of proposition for companies. And, not greenwashing stuff, but actually telling the public what you're doing to reduce your footprint on this planet. And at the same time, telling them how less expensive it is to do that. I never see that. I see, well, we recycle this, or we're using this much less carbon. Nobody ever says this is the cost or the additional capital money that's coming into us because we're doing this. Because I think people appreciate both sides. Think about the social benefit of the so-called AI revolution. Basically, it's access to synthesized information. It's a better search tool to teach kids easier depending on the way they learn. I mean, there's all this cool stuff.
Right.
And there's a cost. And we got to talk about both. It's really easy when you're taking a $13,000 a month drug to be cognizant of the benefit of the drug and also the cost, because it's right there staring you in the face. But since all these decisions are little tiny decisions that make big changes, you need to talk about the $1 pill, or in this case, the fact that you've cut 25% of your water consumption and how many hundreds of gallons can now go to the adjacent fields to grow corn. And this is not a trivial thing. I call it total planetary impact because I'm a Star Trek weenie. But when you look at the total planetary impact of something, you have to take in social benefit and cost, actual dollars and cost, cost of substitution, what's being denied because of that particular thing. You can't just say, well, we reduced our aluminum use by 25% this year. People don't even understand what that is. So you'd be better off saying, and we reduce that cost, and so this many more aluminum canisters can be made, or something. We do a pretty.
Hear what's in it for me.
Yeah, well, we do a pretty bad job of explaining the benefits of water because it's always been there in the West. If you turn it on and it comes out, full of iron and it's orange, people flip out. Remember when people were lighting their faucets on fire, because they'd overuse the water table, and natural gas had seeped into the water table. Had nothing to do with the oil well down the road. Had everything to do with overusing the water. So I think it's something that's always been there in a big industrialized country, wealthy country that the U.S. has always been. And so people treat water like it's worth nothing. It's pretty fundamental to life. So I think it's got a high value.
Right. That's the shift, is that companies that start to look at water as a raw resource that they have to pay for.
Well, yeah, it's part of their raw material stack. They do everything they can to, think about a printing company that they have a form to cut out a box for your beer. All that drop paper gets recycled, not because it's nice to do, but because it makes sense monetarily to do it. And oh, by the way, you get to say to the world, we recycle all the excess paper that comes out of our packaging plant. I mean, you're proving that you're doing something cognizant that helps society.
Well, Grizz, I want to thank you for coming on the show and just us having these very candid conversations about what to some may be very controversial subjects to talk about, but we need to talk about them. And it makes a lot of sense that there's got to, like you were saying, it's always been there. We take it for granted, is that there needs to be a mind shift in how we view water, because if we take care of the water will take care of us.
Absolutely.
And, thank you at Water of being part of that solution, for bringing things to the forefront, not just being someone's like, oh, we need to do this, and then throwing their hands up in the air, but actually, we need to do something. Let's create solutions that can actually make an impact towards this, towards better stewardship, towards proper, as you were saying, fit for use water resource, water reuse and water resource. God, that's a mouthful. But also that there might be some other things that we didn't even think about that we can harvest from it that might become a revenue stream for us. All those things that we don't think about that we need to be thinking about. And so thank you for being part of the solution, Grizz.
Well, I appreciate that. And thanks for, platforming this. You've got a great reputation in the industry. You've been doing this for quite a while, Suzan. And so, you've got all that experience is stacked up into deep, deep knowledge about what we are doing and what maybe we should be doing.
Right. So again, thank you for coming on the show. And for those who want to learn more about what Wastewater does, Grizz, how can they get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing and maybe just talk solutions?
Well, for those Dune fans, you can send me a film script, a film book. But other people that use the internet, if you're into using machines, it's ixwater.com, and you can find out kind of what we're doing and how to get a hold of us, and pick up the phone, please. We love talking to people, and we're old fashioned. We answer the phone here.
All right. Well, thanks again. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. And until next time, keep it flowing. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you're ready to take your marketing to the next level and start increasing sales and opportunities for your business, reach out to us at Creative Raven. We're here to help you thrive in the digital landscape. Visit creativeraven.com or click the link in the show notes below to schedule a call and learn how we can support your growth. If you enjoyed the insights on today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you'll never miss an update. Until next time, keep growing and keep it flowing.